aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you.
Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Grief Chat. And on the phone with us today, we have the host of Grief Chat, Mitch Carmody. And we are also joined today by Linda Cherek. And Mitch is going to introduce her as well. But first of all, Mitch, how have you been?
Oh, doing great. Trying to explore this whole new venue of reaching people virtually. And I find it's really a good venue.
You know, it's not terrible, is it?
No, it's really allowing a lot of other people to join that maybe could not before, and other people that we're going to miss the physical hugs and all of that. But I'm surprised how much Zoom can, with the facial characteristics, and you can watch body language and whatnot, helps immensely. So there is some benefits to it.
You know, I'm actually enjoying watching online meetings that typically would be held in a different format, but they're online by Zoom, and there's something more intimate about it. You almost feel like you're a part of the meeting versus if you watched it and everyone was sitting on a panel or something.
Yes, and a friend of mine is a psychologist, and I've been kind of helping him do a Zoom things, and he says he's having a better rapport with his clients because he's not sitting across the room, or he's looking right at their face. He sees everything, their eyebrows, their lips twitch, whatever. He's really getting a good reading on their the physical biofeedback of them, and it's a really beneficial tool. So yeah, there's some good things coming from it, and so I'm glad we have Linda here. We have not met Linda, but I know she is the certified spiritual director, I think, at Loyola in St. Paul. And I know you've lost your daughter, Kristen. So without further ado, let's talk about Kristen. I'd like to hear about what happened. I know as a bereaved parent, I'm 31 years out, and you're like 27 years out, I believe. So we're similar in longevity.
Mm-hmm. Our daughter was at college. It was her sophomore year in college, and she was an RA, resident assistant, and it was her first week of RA duty. It was her first week of school, and then her first night of RA duty, and about 3 a.m, some boys came in drunk and pulled a prank fire alarm. And she had just finished and had, as we came to understand, probably had just gone to bed, and the alarm woke her up, and she had a cardiac arrest. I'm a nurse by background, and my master's is in social work, which is how I ended up working as a bereavement therapist. But the nurse in me wanted to know why and how and what happened. And so it took a lot of work, a lot of studying and research and asking questions. We finally came to understand through a variety of sources that in our family we have what's called a congenital cardiac problem. It's called prolonged QT syndrome. What it means is the space between the Q and the T wave in your EKG becomes too long, and it causes your heart to flutter and then causes a sudden cardiac death. So in our family, we have what's called type 2, and there's multiple types of prolonged QT. There's still a lot of research going on about it. At the time Kristen died, it was just kind of in the infancy stages of looking at it. But in our family, the type 2, the triggers that cause this elongation are loud sudden noises, medication, and emotion. And she had all three: a sudden noise, the emotion of getting a master key to unlock the doors of all the girls on her end of the dorm, and she had taken an antihistamine, which we have multiple medications we cannot take, and then antihistamines are one of those, and she had taken it for some seasonal allergies. So, as they say, it was sort of the perfect storm.
But you had no idea that she had the long QT?
No, we did not know. It wasn't until after my dad died and my mom came and spent time with us. I took her to our cardiologist, and some significant testing was done, and it was discovered my mom was the carrier, silent carrier. She really never had episodes. And then I have 3 siblings, and my next oldest sister and I are carriers without significant events, and we each have children. And Kristen died, and our third daughter has a defibrillator in, and my sister has one daughter with a defibrillator, and I think 1 or 2 other of her girls are carriers as well.
Wow. So if you had not lost Kristen, you may not have been, and nobody else would have been aware of the...
Right. No one would have known. I mean, it's gotten large. My mom had 4 siblings, and 2 of her sisters were positive. Some of their kids have tested positive. So it's not a matter of fear or kind of awfulizing or catastrophizing something. It's information so that you can be aware and then know what to do for yourself and for your kids. So my cardiologist calls me the long QT warrior. When I hear anything, I'm always like, check that out.
Oh, yes. In fact, have you ever heard of Parent Heart Watch organization?
I have heard of it. I'm not real familiar with it.
I spoke out there for them in San Diego about 5 years ago, so I keep up on their newsletters and whatnot. But same thing. It started from parents like you that they had undiagnosed lung QT, and they start organizing, getting volunteers like doctors to go to schools and doing free lung QT tests to 7th graders before they went into middle school, and so the tragedies that have fallen as you has really led to a lot of savings of other people's lives, and it's tough, but you know that it's helping others, and that Kristen didn't die in vain either. And I think you've been doing this work for 20-some years. Wow.
Yeah, it is interesting when you're traveling a journey of grief. If you travel it looking at your navel, you miss out on a lot of things. So the choice was stay covered up in bed or get up and find a way to live, and ultimately that's the choice that my husband and I made, and our family made, and it prompted me to go back to school. That's where I got my master's at the University of St. Catherine here in St. Paul, and I've been working as a licensed therapist ever since.
Well, you really couldn't just put your head under the covers because you had 3 other children, the youngest being 11. How was the grief for them?
I would say this. Obviously, each of us had a different relationship with Kristen, and so each grief was very individual. For one of our children, it was difficult for her to talk about it initially. For another one of our kids and one of our daughters, there was a struggle with kind of self-image, and stress was taken out through food or not eating. Our son was also very interesting. He was just more outgoing about it and had just approached it differently. So I think each of them, when they approached 19 years of age, however, the somber reality is what would it be like to be 19 and die. They're all amazing adults. They have amazing families and partners and spouses, and they are just really good, holy, solid human beings, I think, who have, because of their experience, they just have a much deeper understanding and appreciation of life and family and time and where do you want to put your effort. And they've all really learned to let go of relationships and situations that aren't loving and nurturing, and they've found their path in life, and they all do great things. We have one daughter is a school principal, elementary school principal, another one is a therapist as well, and our son is in Amsterdam is where he and his family live, and he's worked with people with disabilities and in agriculture, and he's an amazing person to be able to bring people together. Our kids are just doing really important things in the world, and we're very grateful for that. That's one of the blessings and the gifts that have come from loss, that if you're not paying attention and allowing yourself to notice it, that would be a tragedy, not to see what can come from love.
How do you still feel Kristen in your life?
Oh my goodness, every day. It's not ever not there. We have 5 living grandchildren, and I kept a lot of her clothing very intentionally, and so as each of our grandchildren were born or baptized, we made sure they all had a teddy bear with some clothes from their Auntie Kristen. It's their parents' job now to help them create a relationship with her, having not physically known her, but through their stories. Our older granddaughter that lives here, she's 6. She's come with us out to the cemetery to water the flowers for Auntie Kristen. We've got pictures of Kristen at home here, and they're starting to ask questions about, well, who was she and things like that. So we find ways intentionally, and sometimes just by what I call it, sheer movement of the spirit, I guess. Something will come up and then someone will say, Kristen, we're here, she was blah, blah, blah. Our oldest granddaughter here is a dancer. Our oldest granddaughter in Amsterdam is in dance, so I saved some of her dance things too, so we've given them to the 2 older girls right now, kind of as special gifts from time to time. So there's lots of ways we can create rituals and moments of remembering rather than avoiding.
Right, and to keeping them present in our lives.
Absolutely. It never is helpful to try to avoid grief, to keep yourself so busy that fear of it gets in the way of finding a way to create continuing bonds. Because they died doesn't mean they're not in our life anymore.
No, we can still talk about them. In fact, when you said that, I just sent off in the mail yesterday my son's, when he died at 9, 31 years ago, his favorite outlandish outfit in Hawaii, every color in the rainbow that he had on. And that's something I kept all these years. I couldn't get rid of it. And, but my nephew has had, as a baby, it was born, and a little boy now. We've had a lot of girls, nieces, but a little boy is born, and so I sent him Kelly's favorite outfit in the mail yesterday. And I said, I want your son to have it when he turns 9. And whether they use it or not, it's just, that would seem like the most wonderful thing to do for me, and I think he will appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Those are the ways in which we keep their presence present.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's learning to love them in their absence.
Well, that's what you're doing with, you've been doing so much, and you've been married for 50 years, right? You must be retired by now, huh?
Pretty close. 49 years we just celebrated last week. 50 will be next year. I just closed my private practice at the end of January. So she's not really retiring party.
And you have so many degrees, my God, social worker, an RN, and that's you've been helping a lot of people for a lot of years. Yeah,
I joke about that. I said there's a lot of letters after my name, but it just means I'm older and I like to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But you certainly are doing a great thing for the bereaved by reaching out and sharing your experience. And does your husband assist you in that as well?
He does. He actually was the director of cemeteries for the Archdiocese here in St. Paul, Minneapolis. And we also were the volunteer bereavement coordinators, started a bereavement ministry program in our church called Companions in Grief. We have been speakers throughout the Twin Cities with the grief coalitions. There's multiple grief coalitions in the Minneapolis and St. Paul and suburban areas in terms of support, and we typically go and we've spoken together about being bereaved parents, and then I've gone individually to talk about creating rituals at holiday times and just kind of grief in general from my therapy practice background.
Did you ever hook up with the Compassionate Friends or their assistants or help them or?
We did. We went to the St. Croix chapter over in Hudson, Wisconsin, and it was sort of a fortunate piece. Most of the parents there had children who were 16 years of age or older, and then we ended up being facilitators for the group.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I know Mom now, she was on the show not too long ago. She lost her second daughter. She's from the Hudson chapter.
Linda, tell me a little bit, please, about what being a spiritual director means.
It's a good question for you to ask. Spiritual direction is, it allows someone to have a listening companion that can sort of listen deeply and reflect deeply on people's experience in daily life. And certainly grief is one of those. It's not really about being directed. It's more about being encouraged to draw closer to your true self. People are free in spiritual direction to speak about spirituality using language that's significant for them. It doesn't mean that people have to be of a Christian faith. They can have no particular faith tradition, but we all have a spiritual part of who we are. It's just how our human nature is created. And so it just allows people to enter into a relationship with this spiritual director, being a spiritual listener. The privileges and responsibility of a spiritual director is to just journey with you as you deepen your own spiritual experience. So it's a very open, safe way to be heard, to have a trust that gets built where your spiritual director is able to reflect back, maybe ask some questions that you might not think about that allow you to also go a little bit deeper. Certainly in my own experience of life and loss, my own personal faith has been the anchor that's really helped get me through. Spiritual directors typically go through a period of formation. I did that through Sacred Ground Center in St. Paul, and then it was a 3-year process. And then completed all the additional training and hours to become certified.
Do you think that people can journey through grief without a spiritual basis?
You know, that's an interesting question. I have worked with some people in my private practice who would say to me that they were agnostic. I've not really worked with anyone who's atheist. I know there are some people who believe when you die, that's just all there is. There's nothing more to that. The only thing that I have found that is sort of fascinating to me and also, I think, reflective of our human nature is that even though someone says that, they still think of that loved one. They may have an experience of an eagle flying by or a butterfly fluttering or a bird that they see, a song that they hear, that even though they might say, yeah, well, death is just death, it's just over when you die, there's nothing more after that, there is this part of our human nature that goes, yeah, I'm not quite sure. But this was significant for me. Or like with me when my dad died, red was his favorite color, and he had this ornament on their Christmas tree. Drove me nuts. It was a cardinal that made the worst sound ever. But every time I see a cardinal, my dad is who I think of. Mm-hmm. So I think that there is, for those who think that once you die, that's all there is, I do think that somewhere deep within, there's a desire or a hope that maybe that's not complete.
And maybe that's the irony. Maybe that's the spiritual piece all along that was there.
Exactly.
Well, it's really been interesting and fun to talk to you, Linda. Thank you so much for your time today. Our guest is Linda Cherek. She is a certified spiritual director, and she has really helped a lot of people in her private practice, and I know will continue to do so in your almost retirement or whatever you called it. And we want to thank our host, as always, Mitch Carmody, the host of Grief Chat. And the show is heard on AM 1460 and FM 97.7 KDWA in Hastings.
Smile, though your heart is aching.